Hello everyone, how's it going, and welcome to today's Wild Rift video. In today's guide, we're going to be taking a look at the Bashful Bloom Lillia. Lillia is an extremely mobile champion that is played in the jungle. She brings tons of AoE damage, and when possible, she can put the whole enemy team to sleep. Thanks to Lillia's build and ability, she becomes one of the best tank killers in the game. And with her high mobility, she is able to run around during team fights to dodge out on a lot of damage. Taking a look at the build with Lillia, as an AP bruiser, Lillia wants to build both items that give her ability power, but she also wants to build some tank items so that she can survive more during team fights. For the boots, we are going to be going for the Boots of Mana. These boots give Lillia a huge power spike in the early game, giving her ability power, the mana regeneration that's going to help her use her abilities more often during the early game, and also the movement speed to help her around during team fights. For the first item, we are going to be going for Rift Maker, an item that gives her a little bit of tankiness but also gives her a lot of damage, maximum health, ability power, magic penetration, and ability haste. But the big thing is the Void Corruption passive. So when Lillia is in combat with the champions, she gains a stack of corruption every second, and each stack will be increasing her damage by 2.5%. And then at maximum stacks, she is able to convert that extra damage into true damage. Now, the great thing about Lillia is that she's able to deal damage over time, and this counts as Lillia being in combat. So her damage over time, even if she's not in range of enemy champions, will allow her to stack Rift Maker. So as long as you land one ability on an enemy champion, you'll normally be able to get Rift Maker fully stacked, and then it's really easy to keep that true damage throughout the team fight. On to the next item, which works really well again with the damage over time and also a good combination item with Rift Maker, is Liandry's Tournament. Again, another item that gives her both maximum health and ability power, with also the percent magic penetration in there. But as you can see with the Tournament passive, damage and abilities or empowered attacks deals ability power damage based on the enemy's maximum health. I already mentioned how Lillia is a very strong champion against tanks because of her damage over time, and this also helps with that as well with Liandry's Tournament. And again, a big thing, because she's able to deal damage over time, this will also work with every single tick for Liandry's Tournament as well. So you will be able to deal damage over time with her abilities, damage over time with Liandry's Tournament, which is also just going to help with stacking Rift Maker and also dealing the extra true damage. Moving on, we have Rabadon's Death Cap, an incredibly insane ability power item, 100 ability power and the 7% magic penetration, and overall increasing your ability power by 20 to 45% based on level. This is a no-brainer to build on Lillia, since you are building so much ability power from pretty much all your items. Boots of Mana, Rift Maker, Liandry's Death Camp, even Crown the Shattered Queen as well also gives you ability power. So all of this ability power is going to be increased throughout the game and allow Lillia to scale and do a lot of damage. Then after these three core items, you want to start building more defensive items. I say Crown of the Shattered Queen is the defensive item really because of that Safeguard passive, but again, it gives you a lot of damage overall and increases your ability haste. But the Safeguard passive grants you that magical shield that blocks the next hostile ability. With Lillia, you are going to be close in melee range, since your first ability doesn't really have that big of a range, and you want to be the one that's in the front line, running around, dealing a bunch of damage with your abilities, but you are going to be caught sometimes by some crowd control. This is where the Crown of the Shattered Queen comes in to help you block one of them crowd control abilities that might be coming your way. And at this point, you have enough damage in your build, and that's where Amaranth Twin Guard comes in to give you the armor and give you the magic resistance. You already have enough HP with your items that you've building before, but you don't have any armor or any magic resist. So Amaranth's Twin Guard gives you that armor and magic resist that you need, and the endurance passive means again you'll be able to gain a stack of endurance 1 second while in combat, which again is the same as Rift Maker. So with Rift Maker, you gain 1 stack, and with Amaranth's Twin Guard, you gain 1 stack when you're in combat. And as I mentioned, with the damage over time with Lillia, this counts as her staying in combat. So you'll be able to stack Twin Guard, and then at maximum stacks, you gain more size, you gain tenacity, and it also increases your armor and mag resist. So this will give Lillia the tankiness she needs to be in the front line and to run around and do a lot of damage. As for the runes, in terms of your keystone, you have 2 rune choices for your keystone. Conqueror is incredibly powerful when you're against a lot of tanks because you'll be able to do a lot of sustained damage over time, and also you have a little bit more healing. But however, if you are against some squishy champions, you can go for Electrocute. The burst damage that you can deal with Lillia's abilities and a combo with all her abilities as well will allow you to proc Electrocute multiple times during a team fight, allow you to burst very squishy champions. But most of the time, I like to go for Conqueror for the sustained long team fights. As for the other runes, we have Nullifying Orb. Nullifying Orb will help us when we drop low on HP. We are going for the Resolve Tree rune as well, since we don't really need that much damage from the Precision Tree or even the red tree, the domination tree either. We don't really need any of that, so we're just going for as much tankiness as possible. You know, Nullifying Orb for the shield, bone placing when we're jumping in. If we do try and get bursted down, then the next 3 abilities or attacks will be taking reduced damage, and an overgrowth for the extra HP as well. So when we're farming through the jungle, the extra HP that we'll be getting with overgrowth will stack over time, so we're getting more and more HP. This is why you don't really need that much more HP in terms of your lost tankiness item. That's why we just need kind of the armor and mag resistance. As for the final flexible rune, I have Giant Slayer. You can build this if you're against a lot of champions that have bonus health. You can also go for Transcendence. This will give you more ability haste, so you can use your abilities and use your combos more often. Or you can go for something like Coup de Grace as well, or even Gathering Storm to get your scaling ability power for the late game. So plenty of options depending on the situation and who you are up against. And of course, as a jungler, we are going to be taking Smite so we can secure the major objectives, we can clear the jungle much quicker, and we will be going for Flash. With Flash, you have some crazy insane combos which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. But with Flash, you allow to flash in, go for some crazy plays, or even flash away to safety. So that's everything for the build. Let's head on to the abilities. First up, we have Lillia's passive, which is Dream Laden Bow, which Lillia's abilities apply Dream Dust, dealing a percentage of maximum health magic damage over a few seconds. And during that time, Lillia can also restore health at the same time. So whenever Lillia deals any sort of damage, she is able to deal damage over time, which, as I mentioned in the build section, works really well with items like Twin Guard and Riftmaker for stacking, but also Liandry's Tournament, because Liandry's Tournament will also work with the damage over time. So you'll know when someone is affected by Dream Dust with the little icon that they have above their head, and you can see there that they're going to deal a little bit of damage over time. So when you know that there's a little icon above their head, that's how you know they're affected by the passive and also the Dream Dust. Lillia's first ability is Blooming Blows, which also has a passive. When Lillia hits an ability, she gains movement speed for a few seconds, and this can stack up to 4 times. Now, this can also be the same ability. Since her first ability has such a low cooldown, she can use her first ability multiple times during a team fight, and when she hits this ability, she is going to gain stacking movement speed, which makes it very difficult for anyone to lock Lillia down. Her active is Lillia whirls her sensor, dealing magic damage plus additional true damage at the outer range. So with Lillia's first ability, you can see you have an inner circle and an outer circle, and it's vital. It's so important to make sure that every single time you use this ability, whether clearing through the jungle or whether hitting enemy champions, you always hit them on the outer edge because of the extra true damage. Now, this true damage will ignore any armor, any mag resist that the enemies will have. Again, works really well against champions and tanks, which is also really, really good. So as you can see, if you hit them on the outer edge, you can see I did 95 true damage. So that's the big difference there, 99 true damage that time. And you can see every single time that I hit an ability, I gain that stack of movement speed, which is right there, blooming blows. You see the passive there? That's my extra movement speed that I am able to get. And that extra movement speed is going to make it very difficult for enemy champions to lock me down. If I step into melee range and if I just use my first ability when I'm extremely close to the dummy, you can see that I only deal that 50 damage. So it's a big difference. You're gaining like triple the amount of damage really when you're actually hitting enemies on the outer edge, because normally you deal 50 base damage, but you can deal an extra 100 true damage, which is going to be triple the amount of damage that you normally deal, which is why it makes it so crucial when clearing through the jungle to make sure you clear through the jungle quicker, but also making sure that you stay within range of enemy champions and you stay far enough away to make sure that you hit enemies on the outer edge. Now you can also combo your first ability with flash. Is a very high risk, high reward scenario. Since your first ability does have a little bit of a wind up time, you do have the opportunity to Q flash just like that. And you can see this could be very, very useful when you're trying to use it in combination with your ultimate. You can Q flash into your ultimate, and as you can see there, I was able to drowsy all 4 enemies, which sometimes is going to be very difficult if you don't have flash, because you have to walk up this close and then use your first ability, which by that time you're probably getting hit by a lot of abilities and a lot of crowd control. But if you want to surprise the enemy champions, make sure you use your first ability and then your flash instead of flash then first ability, because if you use flash and then first ability, it gives the enemy champions a little bit of time to be able to escape. Lillia's second ability is Watch Out Eep. Lillia winds up a huge strike, hopefully I said Eep right, I say Eep, dealing magic damage, and enemies in the center take additional magic damage instead. So again, another ability which is all about positioning and all about making sure that you hit enemies in the right area. Your first ability, you need to hit enemies on the outer edge. The second ability, you actually need to make sure you hit enemies in the center. You can see the range here of the ability. You can see you have the inner circle and the outer circle. So you can see the outer circle deals about 95 damage. The inner circle will instead deal additional damage. You can see there 194 damage. So again, you're dealing about double the amount of damage. Now, the important thing when using your second ability is you want to make sure you use your first ability before using your second ability, which sometimes I even make the mistake of doing, because you think that you're going to do so much damage with your second ability that you can jump in, you can use your first ability, and you can burst enemy champions down very quickly. However, when you use your second ability and then your first ability, you're actually going to be too close to be able to deal the true damage from your first ability. That's why you want to make sure that you stay within about this range for now and keep using your first ability, and then when enemies are low enough, then use your second ability to jump in, because as soon as you want to use your second ability to jump in, you want to run away and stay out of range, so then you can use your first ability again with the true damage. Again, this is really important to make sure that you hit enemies in the right areas, because sometimes you can make a really big mistake, miss your second ability center and miss your first ability, and you're missing out on about 80% of your damage, probably even more than 80% of your damage, since there's such a big difference between hitting enemies on the outer ring and not hitting enemies on the outer ring, and the same with the second ability as well. Now with your second ability, you can see it's a bit of a movement ability as well. You can actually move a little bit and kind of dash forward. However, you cannot go over walls. You can see the big thing is you can deal damage over walls, but you can't actually jump over the walls. You can kind of jump over like little corners. It is very difficult to actually figure out what corners you can jump over. You like this little corner right here that you can jump over from one side to the other. If you get into the right position, there you go. You can jump over that corner, but over any big thick walls like this, you can deal damage over the wall like this. So if there's an enemy over the wall that's really low on HP, let me give you an example. Say there's an enemy dummy here, for example, you can aim your ability and actually use it over the wall and then deal that little bit of a center damage, but you're not going to go over that wall. Lillia's third ability is Swirl Seed, which Lillia lobs a Swirl Seed overhead, dealing magic damage where it lands and revealing and slowing enemy champions hit. If no enemies are hit, the seed will roll until it hits an enemy terrain. This is a global ability which you can use across the map. you can get this from one side all the way to the next. You can see on the mini map on the top left hand corner, if I use this anywhere on the map, you can see that it will go globally. It can go all the way back to base. It can go all the way from mid to top lane. You can see here, if I use it here, you can hold on the ability, and if the scuttle crab doesn't get in the way, you can go from one side of the map all the way to the other, just like that. And you hitting your third ability sometimes before you gank can give you that setup potential to use your ultimate. Say for example, you're walking into mid lane, you really want to gank mid lane. Say for example, they're walking close enough into melee range. I can aim my third ability and make sure that I hit the enemy champions, because the big thing is with your mini map is that little X icon will show where your third ability is going to land. So if you aim it correctly, you'll be able to see there that I will hit this trainer dummy every single time. And then when I hit my third ability, I can get close enough in range to use my ultimate to slow them down, and again, use my combo afterwards as well. This can also be used if you're in the river, if you're trying to hit the mid lane or the top lane as well. So for example, you're clearing through the scuttle crab and you're like, hey, I completely cleared the scuttle crab. The scuttle crab is now dead. You can look to the mid lane. You can look to the top lane and be like, okay, I can try and get a little bit of an angle here onto the Garen. I can use my third ability, hit my third ability. And again, this will give you setup play to use your ultimate and your other abilities. And lastly, Lillia's ultimate is Lilting Lullaby. Lillia causes all enemy champions with Dream Dust to become drowsy for 1.5 seconds, which Dream Dust is a passive where any ability will apply Dream Dust to them. Afterwards, they will fall asleep for 2.5 seconds. Now, when the enemies are asleep, if they are awakened by any source of damage from yourself or allied champions, they will take additional magic damage. And the drowsy units are slowed over duration, as you can tell, and fall asleep afterwards. Asleep units can't move or act until damaged by an enemy with non-periodic damage. So any source of damage from any allied champions will stop the enemies from sleeping. Now with Lillia, when you're using this ultimate, you kind of want to make sure that you're the one dealing the extra magic damage, and you're the one that can actually combo and stay within range to deal your true damage. Sometimes there can be scenarios where your allies are auto-attacking an enemy champion, you're trying to sleep them, you're trying to make sure that they're completely caught off guard, and your allies behind you keep auto-attacking away and away and away, and actually you want to make sure that you keep them asleep so you're in range to use your first ability and then your second ability to combo on top of that. But your ultimate, as you can see, you've seen it a few times already, you hit an enemy champion with a passive, which as I mentioned before, you can tell that your passive is on an enemy champion by doing this, using your you know, the little icon above their head. Now the good thing is that your ultimate does have a global range as well. So as I mentioned, if you hit an enemy champion with your third ability, you can use your ultimate globally throughout the whole map. It doesn't matter how close or how far away you are to a champion. So I can apply it on both these enemy champions. For example, you can see that's the drowsy duration, where when you hear that sound, that's when they're slowed, and then when they sleep is when the slow duration ends. So for this Garen, for example, I can put them to sleep. They will be drowsy, and you can tell the sleep effect is on them because you can see the little asleep icon above them. Now, as you can see, you don't have a long duration whilst the enemy champions are asleep to actually go close enough to deal the extra magic damage. So if an enemy is closer, it's probably okay that they deal the extra true damage. But the best combo that you can do is obviously when you're hitting your ultimates is you get into range with your first ability, and then when they're asleep, you go first ability into second ability. That right there is such a huge amount of burst damage with your true damage, and also with the center damage with your second ability. Now, you're not always going to get a perfect scenario with this. Sometimes you want to make sure you jump into closer range because the sleep duration is about to end. You use your third ability, you then use your sleep, and then you know that the sleep duration is about to end, so you need to make sure you actually use your second ability and then use your first ability afterwards, because that extra bonus magic damage that you get, like the 200-300 bonus damage that you get with your ultimate to attack enemy champions when they are asleep, again, makes a really big difference. Lillia is all about a champion that is all about positioning, all about making sure that she hits her abilities in the right place and she hits them at the right place at the right time as well. So making sure that you hit your abilities in the range and also hitting them after they sleep, again, will be a big difference after you use your ultimate. Now, another thing as well is that when you're using your ultimate, you can actually use things like stasis and the enemy champions will still be asleep. So that combo that I was talking to you about earlier, when you can use your first ability and then your flash straight afterwards, you can then also use your stasis. So you can do a combo like this, for example. You can do first ability into flash, use your ultimate, and then use stasis. And by the time your stasis comes up, look at that. The whole of the enemy team is asleep. This is one of the most broken and craziest combos you can do with Lillia in team fights. And what makes her so unique in team fights as well is she can go for these flashy plays, but they're not incredible amounts of damage. You know, it's not an incredible amounts of AoE damage that you're able to do. It's all about the crowd control. It's all about the CC. First ability into its flash, use the ultimate, use your stasis to keep yourself alive. So that's when the enemies are drowsy. So when they're drowsy and they're slow, they can still attack you, they can still crowd control you, but they can't attack you whilst they're in status. So you use first ability and then use your ultimate, use your stasis, and by the time your stasis comes back up, look at that, all the enemy team is asleep, and that gives you time again to use your first ability or even your second ability to deal the extra magic damage. Now with the combos, I've already talked a little bit about the combos, but I'll go into them again to make sure that you understand what are the best combos to do with Lillia. The first one is that I want to talk about is the all-in combo. This is when you use all of your abilities. So this is when you start off with your third ability and hit enemy champions with the third ability. You then use your ultimate, and as you're in range with your ultimate, you want to use your first ability straight into your second ability. So it gives enemies as little time as possible to try and escape. So I'll do that again. Third ability into your ultimate, so you can hit enemies from range, and then first ability into second ability. You can see there the amount of damage that I'm able to do. That's 2,800 damage that I'm able to do with one combo, and that's without any items, by the way. So you can imagine how much damage you're able to do with all of the items or the ability power that you're able to get on top of that as well. Another way to use your ultimate again is to use your first ability as the AoE damage. Your AoE damage can hit multiple enemy champions. This means you can also sleep multiple enemy champions at the same time. If I take my CD off, you can see I can use my first ability into my ultimate, and when the ultimate is expired, I can then use my first ability again. And the big thing you want to learn in terms of your combo is making sure that you use your first ability and then your second ability. Most of the time, you don't want to use your second ability first, because this will make you too close in melee range to make sure you get the true damage from your first ability. So you want to do your first ability and then your second ability, which again will give you the biggest amount of burst damage that you can get, which this works very well with Electrocute, which I was talking about later on. However, with the likes of Conqueror, you can stay out of range. You can keep stacking Conqueror with your first ability, keep stacking your movement speed as well, and when you know they're low enough, you can then use your ultimate into your second ability and then walk back to use your first ability again to deal a lot of damage. With the leveling order for Lillia, at level 1, you want to go for Lillia's first ability. You'll be able to kite around the jungle camps, especially the blue buff early on, which is the jungle camp that you're always going to start off with. Making sure that you walk around the blue buff and hit the blue buff in the outer range will give Lillia that extra little bit of damage to clear through the jungle quicker. You don't want to stand in one place and keep using your first ability, because this will mean that you're always hitting the jungle camp in the center circle. So walk around, make sure you hit the jungle camps in the outer ring, and then you'll be able to clear the jungle much quicker. On top of that, you can also use your second ability, again making sure that you hit the jungle camps in the center in the early game to clear through the jungle camps as quick as possible, and then getting your third ability so you have all your abilities available. The first ability you want to max is your first ability. This is one of your main damage sources in the game, not only the true damage but also the AoE damage that you're able to deal during team fights. That's why you want to max this ability first, and then you want to max your second ability. Again, the combo that I was talking about with your first ability and your second ability, both of these abilities are going to be really important. Your third ability you don't really need to max. Most of the time your third ability is used as a setup tool for your ultimate, or just a setup tool in general to try and get vision around the map. You're never really using your third ability for damage, so there's not really any reason to max this as a first or a second ability. That's why you want to max the third ability last, making sure that you max your ultimate when possible. That's everything for the rundown for Lillia. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. Now we're going to jump into a full gameplay where I'll be able to break down one of my games of Lillia and give you all a few tips and tricks when it comes to a game of Wild Rift. So I'll see you in just a second. All right, here we go. On to the gameplay with Lillia in the jungle. Just making sure that my volume is all good there and ready to go. So with Lillia, when you're playing in the jungle, you want to make sure that you start off with your blue buff. I mean, Lillia is a very mana hungry champion that needs to start with the blue buff to make sure that she has enough mana, especially in the early game before you have any items, so that she can clear her jungle a lot quicker. By the time that you have your mana boots, this will be completely fine. You have your mana boots, you have the extra mana regeneration, that will give you the kind of extra mana that you need. Now, as you'll see here, as I'm clearing through this blue buff, you'll see that I'm going to be kiting this blue buff around and making sure that I hit the blue buff on the outer edge of my first ability to deal that little bit of extra true damage. You can also do a little tactic, as you can see there as well, where you can actually use your first ability, since it does have AoE damage, to clear through the first camp quicker, but also to start going on your second camp a lot quicker at the same time as well. So that last instance, as you saw there, of my first ability, I was able to finish off the blue buff, but also start the Krugs at the same times. These little things that you can do by leashing out your blue buff, making sure that you have that little bit of extra time to get from one camp to the next, as you saw there. I use the walls to get a little bit out of range because I know I have time that I can use my ability out of range to deal enough damage. I can pull them out, and that means I'm closer to starting my next camp. So you can see here that I want priority over this scuttle crab as well. I want to make sure I clear the scuttle crab as soon as possible. I have my smite available, so you can see that there's not of a jungle left in sight, so I'm going to be able to smite that away quite easily. And I was like, oh, the blue buff's also available. Not too sure where the enemy jungler is. I don't have smite, but this is very risky. But I know that my bot lane, or my baron lane, as you might call it, was able to get the solo kill. So if there was any possibility that I might get caught here, it's completely fine because the Yasuo still won the lane. Now, surprisingly, it's a Mumu, which, again, a Mumu is another champion that's very mana hungry, so normally starts blue buff. I actually started red buff instead, which was super interesting, really. I mean, maybe if you got a Mumu got the extra ability age from blue buff, maybe a Mumu was able to clear through the jungle quicker. But since I was able to steal the buff as well, you can still see that I'm level 5 already. So I'm already ahead of the tempo this game. Even without smite, I was able to do it quite quickly. I see the smite here, the ward here from a Mumu. I'm trying to warn the whole of my team. I actually missed the smite here as well, which is kind of unfortunate. And honestly, I probably should have hit my smite. I was a little bit unlucky here to not hit my smite, but it's completely fine. You can see that I'm just trying to keep a Mumu within range. I use my sleep, I use all my abilities, and you can see that Garen was able to flash over the wall and finish him off as well. So Mumu tried to counter gank and tried to counter jungle me and tried to steal away the buff. Stole away the buff, but it's completely fine. I already got 2 buffs. I'm already level 5. The red buff is now on the Garen. And then this actually gave me enough time now for me to clear all of my top camps. But a little bit of misplay there. I could have used a combo, which you can do quite well with the major objectives as well, where you use your first ability and then your smite, which will overall deal more damage than a lot more other junglers like a Mumu, because the Mumu doesn't really have a lot of burst damage to be able to quickly use an ability and then smite afterwards. So bit of a misplay there, where I should have actually taken a blue buff and I should have actually won that fight pretty easily, but we take it in the end. I mean, Mumu's in the opposite side of the map. As Mumu is not an early game jungler that you want to try and counter jungle, as you saw there, but you can see I'm just going to carry on power farming, clearing through the jungle, which is what Lillia is always known for. You can see I'm nearly level 7 already. We're 4 minutes into the game and I'm already nearly level 7. So I am so far ahead of the tempo this game, and it's absolutely great. I saw that the mid lane was a little bit of a in a tricky scenario. Flash, use my ultimate, which I maybe went a little bit too far here. I think that I probably could have just killed the Amumu instead. And you'll see that actually, because I didn't kill the Amumu, that he nearly killed the Garen. But I tried to get both enemies at the same time. You can see there, since your first ability has AoE damage, you can sleep multiple enemies at the same time. And that little extra magic damage that Garen was able to do, again, because the big thing with your ultimate is that it doesn't have to be just yourself. It can also be other allied champions as well, that if they deal damage after you hit your sleep, then they're going to deal the extra magic damage, which was actually the big difference there, why Garen was able to live, which is quite nice. My bot lane are trying to go in here and trying to gank. I mean, I'm not there, unfortunately. I went back to base, but it looks like they're okay. Yeah, I mean, Samira has a passive stacked and she's completely fine. So with the bot lane dead, we can now focus towards the dragon. I'm just using my sweeper here, which is the kind of go-to in terms of your lens or your free vision item that you want to get. You always want to get the Oracle lens, which is the red one, to make sure that you're clearing vision as quick as possible. Dragon has been taken, and it actually gives me enough time to go down to bot lane now as well, because the Mumu for some reason is also not at the Rift Herald yet. So I have enough time to clear through mid lane, and because I cleared the mid lane, Garen has no choice. I know I stole the kind of the mid lane farm there, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I mean, for the Garen it's a little bit unfortunate, but to be honest, I just wanted to clear that mid wave as quick as possible, because me clearing through that mid wave meant that the Vladimir had to stay mid lane. The Vladimir didn't want to actually sacrifice any of the XP or any of the gold that the Vladimir wanted to lose in the mid lane. So instead, I actually was able to push out the mid lane, and me pushing out that mid lane gives Garen enough time to actually roam to the Rift Herald, get the kill onto the Mumu, and get the other kills on top of that as well. So you can see how my tempo in the early game and my power farming in the early game has been such a huge benefit to me, that I have been able to completely out-tempo this game. Like, this tempo is completely in my favor now. There is nothing that really the enemy champions can do. You can see I'm pushing this bot wave now. I'm clearing through this bot wave. I'm going to take the bot lane turret as well. Like, I don't know what the enemies can do at this point. Like, we are so far ahead of this game. And this is like one of the great things about Lillia, is that because she has one of the fastest jungle clears in the game, and she's able to get ahead of the tempo compared to other junglers, she can take some aggressive early game plays like you saw in this game, where I'm looking to invade. I'm trying to push out waves very quickly, because you can also push minion waves very quickly. And because you can push minion waves and help your laners push the waves, they can then roam and help you with these major objectives. So Oath Dragon, Rift Herald taken. We got the first tower of the game. And now we got 3,000 gold, which I should probably be going back to base by now. But as long as I clear through the whole bot side of my jungle, I can just go back to base. It's about being as efficient as possible when clearing through the jungle. I should really go back to base here. I have like 3,000 gold. I'm not too sure what I'm doing here. Yeah, I should not be here. I'm kind of trolling. I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of trolling here. I'm not too sure exactly what I'm doing. I mean, I'm defending the wave, which is actually okay. It looks like the Renekton actually kind of entered. I'm not too sure what the Renekton's doing. Okay, Renekton's escaping. Can I go back to base now? I have like 4k gold. Yeah, I should have gone back to base a lot earlier, but we was able to defend the bot lane anyway, which is why I wanted to do. So Rift Maker, and also both of the components that I need for Liandry's as well. As you can see, actually no, sold the second component for Liandry's, and I actually went for the stasis enchant instead, because I really feel like the stasis enchant is very important for Lillia, as I was talking about, in terms of combos and in terms of putting enemy champions to sleep. It's the most crucial item that you can really get out of any other item. Now, since I cleared through the jungle so quickly, you can see that because I'm so far ahead, I'm actually going to make that to my advantage and try and steal as many enemy camps as possible. You can see I'm over a level ahead of the Amumu right now. The movement speed that I'm able to get from my passive as well, which I can also get from the jungle camps, means I can get from one side of the map to the next a lot quicker. Looks like they're going for a play in the mid lane, which I'm not able to get to in time, because I'm fast, but I'm not that fast. That's the problem. So it looks like my team is in a little bit of trouble here in the mid lane. Yeah, one enemy champion down. Looks like the next might be down as well. I land asleep onto Tristana, but the Tristana jumps away. That's completely fine. To be honest, using my ultimate there to make sure that the Tristana jumps away means that the Tristana can't do enough damage to me. So I'm completely fine with the play that I just made. Oh, the slow there. Oh, that was beautiful. The slow that I was able to do there. And also, I somehow got the Lulu over the wall. I don't know how that happened, but I also got the Lulu over the wall as well. And the burst damage that you can do with this champion, and you can see the movement speed as well. Like, I'm so fast every single time that I'm trying to run around during these team fights, run around through the enemy jungle. You can see Renekton can't keep up with me, and because I have the movement speed, I know that I can get into range to use my true damage on my first ability. So I've been able to do that so well in these fights and so well during this game, and I think this really shows kind of the power of Lillia at the moment in the current meta. I mean, I would say one of, if not the best junglers at the moment in the current meta, and you're seeing why, exactly why in this game. This is one of the main reasons why Lillia is so powerful in this current meta. Second dragon taken, going back to base, pick up the Liandry's as well. So we have that Riftmaker Liandry's combo that I was talking about. So Riftmaker, again, with our damage over time, is going to help us get to the true damage a lot sooner. So we have kind of double the amount of ways to get the true damage, which is quite nice. Unfortunately, the minions cop blocked my third ability there, which is a little bit unfortunate. I'm trying to wait for a good time in here to use my first ability. You see, I use my first ability. I hit the double drowsy. This is one of the scenarios where the enemies, my allies, sorry, are still attacking the Vladimir and also the Amumu. I probably could have got more there, to be honest with you. I probably could have got into range to use all my other abilities. Unfortunately, they weren't asleep for that long. Renekton trying to clear this wave, but yeah, there's nothing that the Renekton can do, sorry. 11-0, oh no, sorry, 7-0-7. I know we can't end the game here, so I'm pinging my teammates to go back because we have no minions. There's no point of us overstaying. I'd rather take this time to take the jungle camps instead of sitting in the base and doing absolutely nothing. That kind of realization that you have as well is also a big importance in the game, just in general, not just with Lillia. Understanding when you can finish a game and when you cannot finish a game. You can see here that me denying the jungle camps just puts Amumu further and further behind. With the power farm that I have of Lillia. I'm going to go back to base now. I'm going to get both my components of the death cap. Get an easily large rod. Get the blasting wand. Get them both completed. And yeah, at this point of the game, it's pretty hard for us to lose, to be honest. I mean, if we lose at this point, then it's very difficult. You can see there, the Mumu only had like, what, 7,000 gold? I don't know how much gold I had. I flicked the leaderboard too much. Sometimes I do that where I flick the leaderboard too quickly, and it's sometimes too quick for my own good. And I actually don't remember. I wanted to farm 2 jungle camps here, and as soon as I farm the 2 jungle camps, I can get death cap. So now I'm at 3 items. To be fair, it doesn't look like my team needs me. Yeah, I've 13,000 gold. So I nearly have double the amount of gold of the enemy jungler, which is kind of crazy. But it looks like my team is overstepping way too far. There are only 3 people by themselves. I'm not too sure why 3 of my teammates are trying to push in the bot lane. This is a huge mistake from my team. But look at this, by the way. Oh, this combo is so good. Oh, it's so beautiful. That flash combo, the extra AoE damage that I'm able to get as well. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Trying to deal the extra damage to Lulu to try and get the kill. I'm like, yeah, give me the kill. Give me the quadra. But yeah, no quadra this time, unfortunately. That's what I tried to go for the kill. Wasn't able to get it either. But you can see like the perfect place to get a fight with Lillia is in the jungle where there's not a lot of room for the enemy champions to move around. So you can make these flashy plays. You can flash forward, use your first ability, get this huge, massive ultimate sleep, and win the game for your team. That was pretty much all by myself. My allies were pushing down bot lane 3 versus 5. They all died. And I was like, okay, this is my time to shine, show the power of Lillia, flash in first ability, use my ultimate, sleep everyone, and deal a huge amount of AoE damage. And there you go. A victory just like that. Pretty flawless game. Not a lot of mistakes, except for really if you talk about the the kind of early game with me missing my smite on Amumu. You can see my damage, 25,000 damage overall, which only Samira did more damage than me, which is actually a pretty big surprise. I'm surprised Samira did that much damage, but I think they got so far ahead in the bot lane, they just kept fighting over and over again. I believe I showed my rune stats as well. Yeah. So this game, I took Giant Slayer because I know I'm against the Mumu, Vladimir, Renekton, and also Lulu. You know, all of these champions are building health. So the bonus damage you can see there, 1,600 bonus damage is quite nice. And again, given the fact that you have a resolve tree that gives you the defensive stats means that you can go for items like Death Cap to give you more damage. And because I took Conqueror this game, the more sustained damage that I'm able to deal with the likes of playing against tanks like a Mumu and also Renekton. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the gameplay. Hopefully you enjoyed this guide. As always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next wild video. Peace.